theatricality and deception. Powerful agents to the uninitiated, but we are initiated.
I'm super excited!
Of 10 former Clinton employees that have mysteriously died. Number 10, Seth Rich. Staff member for the DNC who worked directly with the Clinton campaign. He had intimate knowledge of the DNC email servers, and some credit him with being the whistleblower that leaked the DNC emails to WikiLeaks. He was found shot to death in an upscale neighborhood in Washington, D.C. To this day, his murder remains unsolved. Number 9, Walter Scheib, former chef for the Clintons. He worked as a sous chef at the White House, while Bill Clinton was in office. The Clintons liked him so much that they requested he work as their personal chef after Bill left office. Scheib was a healthy and active man who liked to go hiking. In 2015, on a hiking trip, he slipped and drowned in a nearby lake. Number 8, Mark Middleton, a former Clinton aide with ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He allegedly worked as a middleman between Clinton and Epstein. Mark is shown on flight logs of Epstein's jet, and on 8 separate occasions was the person who checked Epstein into the White House. He died of a gunshot suicide in his own home. Number 7, Dana Hyde, prominent D.C. lawyer who served as a senior aide for both Obama and Clinton. She died due to turbulence on a private plane ride with 4 other people. The other people on the plane were all fine. Her cause of death was ruled as blunt force trauma. Number 6, Alan Krueger, an economic aide who worked for both Clinton and Obama. He was a prominent economist who sat on the Council of Economic Advisors. After leaving the White House, he consulted for Uber on their job creation plan. Krueger was found dead at his home in Princeton at the age of 58. Number 5, Vince Foster, a childhood friend of Bill Clinton and worked alongside him when he was the Attorney General for Arkansas. Foster would later become a White House counselor for Clinton and considered to be one of his most trusted aides. Foster was at the forefront of almost every scandal and even handled the Clinton family's personal finances. He died of a gunshot wound to the head. Number 4, Paul Tully. He was the director of political operations for the DNC. Tully had a part in every campaign since 1968 and worked closely with Clinton on his multiple elections. Clinton himself described Paul as a dear friend and trusted advisor. He died of unknown reasons in a hotel room in Arkansas. Number 3, Mary Mahoney. At the time of the Monica Lewinsky scandal, a Newsweek article was written implying that Mahoney could be another victim of Bill Clinton. In prior years, she had worked as a former White House intern for Bill. When news broke of their potential relationship, she was working as an assistant manager for a Starbucks in Georgetown. Shortly after the Newsweek article, an assailant attacked that very Starbucks and shot her to death execution style. She was 25 years old. Number 2, Ron Brown, Secretary of Commerce for Bill Clinton and former DNC chairman. At the direction of Clinton, Brown took a trip to Vietnam representing the United States. The purpose of this trip was to normalize relations with the communist country. An investigation was later opened into Brown regarding corrupt activities he took part in while on the trip. Brown allegedly cut a deal with the investigators and planned on giving up a bigger name for a reduced sentence. He never got to complete his deal as during a trip to Croatia, the Boeing 737 he was on smashed into the side of a mountain, killing him and 34 others. Number 1, Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone knows of Epstein, the millionaire financier who owned a private jet and an island used for the human trafficking of minors. Clinton was a close associate of Epstein and visited his island multiple times. Epstein would commit suicide in his top security jail cell. Footage of his suicide was mysteriously lost, and the guards watching him were conveniently taking a 4-hour break.
Why is ABC News, owned by Disney, deceptively editing Donald Trump's January 6th speech last night to make it look like he incited a riot?
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we fight like hell. That's not what he said. They took a line from the beginning of the speech and a line from the end of the speech to make it look like Trump violently unleashed the crowd into the Capitol. What he said was march peacefully and patriotically. They didn't include that. They doctored it. That was Pierre Thomas who fronted that package. Look at him, ABC News chief correspondent. That wasn't a mistake he made. He's been in the business a while.
After this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down anyone you want, but I think right here we're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity.
Time to go! Time to go! Time to go!
Sorry, up here.
Up here, the Giants first. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Roger that. Yeah, hot.
God bless the men and women in blue. God bless you guys. We love you. You're on your side. Thank you.
All great place. Push down.
Come on, let's go.
Thank you, officers. God bless you guys. Thank you for your patience. We really appreciate it. Not as glorious in person, is it? Not as glorious. It smells like an old church. Thank you, guys.
We gotta send him out there.
Alright, so I was in Australia last month, and they heard we were from Texas, and they were like, oh, you guys still have guns over there. Yeah. Ours were taken away after the Port Arthur massacre. How far are we from that kind of thing here in the United States? So I'll start with that question.
It happened, and it happened in 2005 during Katrina. You actually had officers going door to door confiscating people's weapons.
Sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You say guns will be taken? No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city.
They told us, put your hands up in the air. Let us see your hands.
They're drawing down on me, and they let the looters run rampant for over a week? Are you kidding me?
I really thought they were going to kill me. I really did.
They didn't care what your rights were. They were going to deny it.
You're letting the thugs get away with everything, and you're coming to honest, good citizens and taking away their protection, and it is wrong.
The order had been given for police and National Guard to go house to house, often with guns drawn, to evacuate residents and confiscate their firearms.
They kept pushing me back, and ended up like this.
Then, Patty showed them a small revolver she was carefully holding in the palm of her hand. A camera crew was there to capture what unfolded next.
I said, it's not even loaded. And I dropped it on the floor.
You got a gun, left.
Well, they punched me in the face.
Left, man.
Look at my black and blue marks. Look at what they did.
Somebody uses a firearm to prevent themselves from being a victim. That doesn't mean they shot somebody. That doesn't mean they killed somebody. Sometimes all it means is they brandished it to somebody that was trying to hurt them, and that person decided to not hurt them. If we decide to ban guns or severely restrict or make it incredibly difficult for a law-abiding citizen to get one, you can't just look at what you hope will happen, which is you hope that that'll make it harder for a bad guy to get one. But I guarantee you it will make it harder for a good guy to get one. So what happens to the 500,000 or the broader estimates, 2 million people every year that use a firearm to protect themselves? What happens to them? See, when they become a victim, they now become a victim as a direct result of your policy, which disarmed them or made it more difficult for them to get a firearm in the first place. So we have about 33,000 gun-related deaths per year. Now, if you take out suicides, that gets rid of 2/3 of them. So now you're down to 1/3. Out of that 1/3, the vast majority of that is inner-city crime. In fact, if you take, I think it's the 5 largest metropolitan areas in the United States, and you take those out of the statistics for the U.S., our murder rate drops significantly within the developed world. And I think that's a very important thing to take into consideration before we look at how we're crafting policy for this. A free people should not be entirely dependent upon somebody else to be able to provide for their security. And I think history gives us plenty of examples of what happens when people feel like they are completely at the mercy of their government to be able to protect themselves. Look, I think whenever we look at mass shootings and whenever we look at gun violence, especially when it's targeted against very vulnerable people like school children at school, that's horrifying. The question is how do you actually prevent that? And you know, we've had guns in this country forever. We used to have, like, I'm old enough to remember a time where students had shotguns in the rifle rack in their pickup trucks, and that way when school got out, they went hunting. No mass shootings. So the causation correlation is, okay, well, the gun equals the shooting. No. We need to look at why has there been such a diminishing of the value of human life? Why have these become targets? And then how do we properly address that culturally? And if the only way you can think of to properly address it culturally is to disarm people that did nothing wrong, then what you're ultimately telling them is that, one, you're going to provide for their security. Okay, well, the government has done a real bang-up job of making sure that happens. Two, you're not assuming any responsibility as the politician if they get hurt as a result of your policy. And three, what you're saying is that your rights and your civil liberties and your ability to defend yourself are reliant completely on whether or not somebody else abuses their rights. If your rights are forfeit the moment somebody else abuses theirs, you don't have any rights.
Cannot understand how an $8 million barn laced with private security, despite being the most protected property likely in the city here, maybe in Canada, it already has RCMP and parliamentary policing. They had a private detail outside during the construction phase. They have an elevator that nobody knows where it goes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the witnesses for being here today. We appreciate it. First off, who approved this expenditure? Either of you can answer.
So again, what happens in terms of Treasury Board involvement, it is the approval of the corporate plan, as well as the capital and operating budgets. The plan and the budgets cover major activities and significant line items within the budgets. So in this case, I think of this particular project, it would be rolled up in a higher level line because these are really meant to be higher level documents.
Okay. How many floors are contained within the $8 million barn project?
How many?
How many stories? How many floors?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know that it's a vehicle storage facility, and based on the pictures, it seems to be a one-story building, but I have not visited, so the National Capital Commission could probably provide you with details about the building, its size, number of floors, and so on.
If it is in fact a one-story or one-floor building or barn, can you explain why it has an elevator?
Well, in that case, it must have multiple stories. The The building is, my understanding based on publicly available information, is it serves a number of functions, including vehicle storage, it's a repair garage, it's equipment and tool storage, it's a workspace. My understanding is that the National Capital Commission uses this building for operational equipment to be able to manage the 79 acres of land on Rideau. But in terms of how...
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. My point is, if you can see in the picture, I don't know if I can table these, Chair. There's no French and English documents, but just the photo I think is important. It's clearly a one-story building that has an elevator. So does the elevator go up or down? And if it goes down, what's under there?
The question would have to be answered by the National Capital Commission. I would be speculating. I would assume if it's a garage, if there is an elevator, it could be that it's to be able to move equipment up or down potentially. But I'm really speculating, so the National Capital Commission should be able to answer those questions for you.
Can you explain why $5,870 was spent on fiber optic cabling for the $8 million barn project? So we know that it has an elevator, we know that it's one story, and it's fully equipped with fiber optics. So I'm just curious why it needed the fiber optics to store vehicles and tools in it.
The National Capital Commission would be able to answer that question as the requirements in terms of what they needed to be able for the operation building. They would need to be able to define or explain
I
why
appreciate
that was necessary.
that. So back home in Miramichi, Grand Lake, most of us have a building or a barn, a baby barn, a storage shed. Depending on where you live and where you grew up, you might call it something different. But none of our storage sheds or barns cost $8 million. None of them have elevators, and none of them have fiber optics. As a matter of fact, the people in my riding don't have access to fiber optics. In my hometown of Blackville, as an example, we're a small municipality. We have satellite internet and other options. We don't have fiber optics, so it's really hard for the public to understand how much this type of waste would be put into an $8 million barn.